goes live. So that's why. So we have other people on. Do we have other people on yet on the Zoom or not?
Not yet.
Not
It's
yet.
still not admitting the participants.
Okay, good. There is about I know there's quite a few people on the Facebook Live just waiting already, I think.
Yeah,
So,
in your own Facebook Live. Yeah.
yes, that's right. Yes. So that's very good. So we'll just wait and see. You guys are doing such an amazing job, to be honest. Like a really good job. Like it's phenomenal.
A lot of work to do also because we
Yeah.
are doing also work from paperwork from school, from our school, because we're preparing also for this coming school year in August. So there are a lot of
Yes.
modules have to work on it. Then
Yeah.
other instructional
Is
materials that we can going to use in our
is there a
online
lot
class.
of is there a lot of preparation with the coronavirus as well now?
Uh, here in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Yeah, the government is, we're still in the general quarantine, I think. We're still in
Yep.
GCQ. So there's limitations in terms of mobility of the people, but still the work or the government offices and other private offices are already open because
Yeah.
it's a big problem in terms of our economy.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I mean, same here, but I think you have such a bigger country than Australia. I mean, you're 4 times bigger than Australia.
Yeah, and it's more an island. Australia
Yes.
is you
No,
have
the population is 4 times bigger than
yes, yes, of course.
yeah. I was saying to Geraldine yesterday that I teach lots of students at my high school in Sydney who come from the Philippines. There are a lot of them. So just beautiful children, wonderful children. So
There are a lot of Filipinos there. You are in
yeah.
Sydney.
Yes, that's correct. I'm in Sydney and I'm at a public high school. I'm at the second largest public high school in Sydney. So there's 2,000 students at that particular school. And yeah, a lot, like out of all the students that I teach, I believe the most respectful and the most interesting, but certainly the most respectful and well-behaved are undoubtedly Filipino students all the time.
Yeah, because the discipline is still instilled to the students, Filipino children, particularly if their parents are pure breed Filipino.
Yeah.
They're even instilling the disciplines and giving respect to the teachers.
Yes. What more than any other nationality. So, and that's honest. Like I'm not just saying that. Like that is I've taught for 22 years at the same school. And that is honestly just how they respond. So it's very nice and it's wonderful to connect with.
And they are very appreciative.
Yes.
All the things that you are doing towards to them, especially when you're teaching them.
It is good. It's been very good. That's for sure. Very good. So I'm excited about that, and I'm looking forward to sharing with the people here. So I think so. The Facebook goes live in just another minute or so.
Okay, sir, I will admit all the participants now. We will be live on YouTube.
Yep.
So that you will meet them before you start with your.
You can have a meet and greet first before you start your presentation, so that you have also an information or background about our participants for today's webinar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You can turn on your microphone and meet our source speaker.
Morning.
Say hi.
Oh, hello. There's some faces. Hello. Good morning.
Yes. You can open your video cam so that our source speaker can see your face. There. So these are our members who are actively participating in all our webinars.
Wonderful. Oh, that's very exciting. Hello. Good morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm
Good morning
to you, our source speaker, Mr. Shane Tubbs from Sydney, Australia. Let's meet And let's say hi to our resource speaker and giving thanks.
Good morning.
Sir,
Good morning.
you accept our
Hello.
invitation to share your
Morning,
knowledge
sir.
and
Good
expertise
morning, welcome.
in physical education.
Morning.
Hello, welcome. Hello, Philippines. It's great to be able to talk to lots of across the world. I'm very excited about that. So I'm kind of doing two things at once here. I've got the Zoom just here, and at the same, I've got the Facebook Live as well. So it's both things going at the same time. So I'm just going to make sure that the Facebook Live. There's the Facebook Live. Hello, everybody on Facebook, because I think that some people are on Facebook and some people are on Zoom. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we are live also in YouTube.
Oh, live on YouTube as well. Oh, that's fantastic. I'm very glad. So welcome to this best time in history. Good morning, everybody on Zoom, and good morning to everybody who's on the Facebook Live. I can see there's a lot of people on that as well. So thank you for joining me. I couldn't believe the number of people that responded in the Philippines to this, to this particular conference. Your organization and enthusiasm is amazing. And I was just saying, for all of those who've just joined, I've just been saying to Geraldine and Anna that I teach in the second largest high school in Sydney, Australia. And I was making sure the Facebook Live is working. And I have lots of Filipino students that I teach at my school in Sydney. So they're born in the Philippines and they're now living in Australia. And I was saying to Geraldine and Anna that they are the most polite and most respectful students out of any culture that I teach. And in the school that I teach at, which is a public high school of 2,000 students, we have probably 30 different cultures in our school, and Filipino is number one by far. Respectful. So thank you for inviting me, everybody. I really appreciate it and attend. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, Miss Anna, please introduce first Sir Shane.
So can you share me the screen first, Ms. G?
Okay, so do you want me to do anything else here, Geraldine or Anna?
We will just start our session by introducing you and welcoming our participants. Then the rest is yours now, Mr. Shane.
Wonderful, wonderful. So this is on YouTube. So I'll let you do the introduction first. So I'll let you do that. Sorry.
Okay. Ma'am G, kindly share this. Can you allow me to share my screen?
Oh, wait. You're one of the hosts already.
Disabled.
Oh, it's disabled. Wait. Oh, that's the problem for... Wait. Wait a minute. Can I see your name?
Anna. So before we formally start our session, may I request all the participants to mute your microphone and also to turn off your video so that we can save our bandwidth and we don't have any internet interruption while our resource speaker presenting his discussion about the topics for today.
Okay, Anna, you may present.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, so good morning. Good morning, everyone. And once again, welcome to the National Council for Physical Educators of the Philippines, or NCPEP Incorporated, together with our organization, Jose Abad Santos Manila, present this NCPEP International Fit Fund webinar series. But before we start our discussion, allow me to read the guidelines in our webinar. So our participants are asking to mute their voice hearing during the presentation, and also we will able to give you or provide you questions through or via our chat mechanism on the online meeting software, which is Zoom. Also, public participants, those who are in YouTube, you can ask questions, and this question will be addressed in the public comment periods per schedule or get answered via email if you don't have any more time to answer your question. So the participants will be given or create discussion and ask questions during the discussion period. So as we discuss on this, that all questions will be entertained after the presentation of our resource speaker. So do not close your session or log out during the webinar. You may leave in time in between, but your relog in may not be connected as it may interrupt the system also. And you can log out after the event finishes. Also, you may not ask personal questions or non-subject related questions during the event. You have to also turn off your camera, as I mentioned, or cover your lens if you are not in your seat. And during the presentation, when not everyone is on the webcam, you may need to rely on cues, and you can use such as hand raising icons or questions posted in the chat. Ask questions concisely and avoid wasting time in lengthy introductions, and don't self-promote or spend a lot of time sharing your opinions before asking questions. So if you have any comments, ask yourself if these comments really help others before commenting it. And number 8, don't use the chat room as your personal water cooler. So all you need to do or use the chat room for asking questions or giving feedbacks about our resource speaker. And also, you would not stand in the back of the room gossiping with the other other members or other um, participants while a presenter was lecturing, and refrain from using chat room just to socialize. Also, let me remind everyone, okay, do not forget to take selfie before and towards the end of our session together with our resource speaker. And of course, you have to post that in our FB page, FB group, using hashtag SpeedFun Webinar Series, NCPEP International, and virtual conference. Attendance link will be given in our chat room for those who are in the Zoom, and also the link will be posted in the comment section in our YouTube channel. So attendance will be until 12 noon only. Also, for inquiries and updates of our upcoming events, you can add our FB account, join our FB group, and also like our FB page, and share, like, and subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you very much. So let's proceed in presenting our resource speaker. Okay, so our resource speaker is Mr. Shane Stubbs. He is graduated as a Bachelor of Education in Health and Physical Education in 1988 in Canberra University. In 1994, he began working with NSW Department of Education as a full-time health and physical education teacher. And he also launched the Mild Child's Healthy Life Expert Secrets Roadmap project. Without much further ado, let us all welcome and give a virtual clap to our resource speaker, Mr. Shane Stubbs.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Thank you, Anna, very much.
Okay.
Good morning to the Philippines, everybody. I have not been to your country, unfortunately, and I'm very interested in going. Can everyone hear me? Am I good? Can you hear me okay, Anna?
Yes,
see me?
yes.
Fantastic. That's excellent. So I have the Facebook Live working at the moment, and I'll just give you a little bit of housekeeping and then what and how the process will work that I discussed with Geraldine. So I have my presentation ready and loaded on some software on the Facebook Live page. So all the people that registered for the conference, they will be able to see the Facebook Live, and I will talk through the Zoom, but then I will be muting that, and the presentation itself will be on the Facebook Live. So I want to give you a few minutes to go and join the Facebook Live if you haven't done that, because that's where my presentation software is, and it's not presentation software that loads into Zoom, unfortunately. So you'll see that there. And for anybody who misses the actual, for some reason, the Facebook Live link in your Facebook group that was posted there. And for anybody who can't get on, please send a message here. but don't despair if you don't actually see the presentation part of the conference, because I'm going to put my version of it into a web link and post that into your Facebook group with approval within a day's time. So there'll be some replays of the actual presentation material itself. So that's just a bit of housekeeping that I'll be attending to all the people on Facebook Live, and then we'll have some replays, because I know that there were 1,580 people who registered, but not everybody can attend on the day, and I understand that. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. That is it's very much an honor to be invited to come and speak and share with you my experience, which you'll see is quite varied. And I have done a lot of work with a lot of professors and universities in Australia, New Zealand, in the United States of America, in England, and in Canada, and South Africa. I've been working with lots of professors whilst I've been a teacher. So they are professors in things like childhood physical activity research, cardiology, medicine, public health, the American Heart Association, the Australian National Heart Foundation, pedagogy, cognitive neuroscience. So rather than just be a health and physical education teacher, I've been doing a lot more than just that over the past 10 years. And I've been actually still teaching for 32 years at the same time as a health and physical education teacher, and in the same school for 22 years. So I'm delighted to share with you. And I know that there's a lot more people joining on the Facebook Live, which is fantastic. So I am thrilled just to be able to talk about Manila and not just Manila, sorry, all the Philippines. But I first got introduced to your country. I wanted to share this with you because I mentioned it to Geraldine while still more people are turning up onto the Facebook Live link. If you don't know where it is, go to your Facebook group of your for this conference, and the link is there. But I first got introduced to the the Philippines, your country, when I was a child in 1975. The famous boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier was in, that's why I keep saying Manila, was in Manila. And it was the first time a child from here in Australia, where I grew up. I was actually born in Melbourne, and I watched my first ever international satellite TV event live. Was the called The Thriller in Manila. And if you're old enough to remember that or look at it on YouTube, it's one of the most famous sporting contests ever happened in the world. And I got introduced to your country there, and it's something that's been a historical event. And I'm now delighted. I can't believe all that happened in 1975, and here we are in 2020, and using technology, we're able to come and share with all the people here on Facebook Live, and then there's Zoom conference. And so here's what's going to happen in today's presentation. It's as Anna said, it's going to go till 12 o'clock your time. There's going to be, you can stay for longer if you want. If you want to ask me more questions on Facebook Live, you can do that. Here's what's going to happen. I've got about 5 different sections that I'm going to do presentations on. They are presentations that, so if you're on my Facebook page right now, you'll see that there is my hardcover book. Here's what has basically been happening. Around the world, including Australia and the Philippines, their level of physical activity, so the amount of physical activity that school-age children, both primary and high school children do, is plummeting. Not just in Australia, but in the United States and Canada, England, South Africa, all these different places, it's dropping and dropping and dropping. And so the great problem with that is, sorry, there's something that's just gone on there. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm going to turn that off. It's just on Facebook Live. The great problem that we have is this, that there has not been a solution from schools, from educators, on how to raise the personal physical activity levels of school-age children. So, for example, I'll use Australia numbers, and then I'll go to some numbers that I've done some research on in the Philippines. In Australia, by the time a child reaches the age of 15, this will blow your mind, 98.1% of children at 15 years of age, boys and girls, do not do the minimum physical activity levels in order to be physically healthy. And I looked at that. That's my son on the front cover of my book on the Facebook Live that you can see. And 98.1% don't do enough physical activity on a weekly basis in order to make them physically healthy. And I looked at that and said, well, I teach health and physical education. How come this is happening? I need a solution to this. I need to solve a problem. So 10 years ago, I started consulting with these professors and from all over the world, not just Australia, not just New Zealand, not just England, but all over the world, and particularly a lot of professors in the United States. And out of that work, plus my practical teaching experience, I wrote this book called My Child's Healthy Life, The Expert Secrets Roadmap. Now, that book has inside it what we call educational framework. So a professor that I'm working with from Melbourne, you will see in this conference, in this presentation, that professor is the professor that helped me to understand how we can get children actually really interested and really engaged. So we call it deep engagement and deep knowledge in their personal physical health status. So that's what we're going to go through today. So section 1, the title of section 1 is called Frameworks Forever. So if you're on the Zoom, I'm hoping that you have found the Facebook Live page, which I emailed out to all participants. And in addition to that, I also have put in your Facebook page. I'm going to share with you a section. So each section goes for a different amount of time. So the first section goes for 18 minutes, and it is a video of me doing the presentation. You'll see in a minute what I mean. Then I'll come back and it'll be me live talking for a few minutes. And then we'll go to section 2. Then I'll come back, it'll be me live for a minute. Then I'll go to section 3. And then I'll finish off with a couple of more. But it's a sequence of introducing you to the work that I've done in school here in Australia and New Zealand. And now I'll have lots and lots of PE teachers. I have over 2,000 PE teachers in the United States alone who are now looking at this work and utilizing this work. So I'm excited to share this with you guys as well. So if you're here on the Zoom, get across to the Facebook Live, join it. Don't panic if you don't get there in time. I'm about to load the presentation for the first 18 minutes. And then whilst that presentation is going on, you'll see a whole lot of stuff that comes from inside the book that I've used with my students. So I turned what I did with my students into this book and now into this first presentation here, called The Best Time in History. You'll see why I think as a health and physical education teacher, that this is the best time in history for us to get school-age students to become physically healthy. Even though we have lots of things going on in the world right now, like coronavirus, causing a lot of problems, certainly a lot of problems in Australian schools, and I've read a little bit about what it's done in the Philippines. But I looked at the data on Philippine students. 93%, so a bit less than Australia, 93% of Philippine students by the age of 15 are not physically active enough to hold off diseases like cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 killer in the world of adults and the #1 cause of sickness. So everybody, let's get straight into this now because I want to get this done in time. I'm going to now load this video, and it's actually, you'll see what it is. It's me presenting some frameworks. The first section 1 is called Frameworks Forever. So we'll load this, and if you're on Zoom, I'll still stay here on Zoom, but it's going to be on Facebook Live, the actual presentation. So here we go. Hi everybody, welcome to my first section of this particular virtual conference called The Best Time in History. And I'm going to walk you through section number 1, which is on the agenda here, called Frameworks Forever. What you're about to see, we'll walk through a series of different slides here, are the new educational frameworks that I've created from all of my experience as a health and physical education teacher for the past 32 years, so teaching here in Australian schools, plus the additional work that I've been doing outside of that as a school teacher, hosting my radio show and interviewing and consulting with and working with over, wait for it, 100 PhDs in areas like cardiology, public health, childhood physical activity research, cognitive neuroscience, applied exercise physiology, exercise science, and the list goes on. The health sciences and the medical sciences, the people I've been working with have been, what they've been able to do is help me to design, using my teaching experience in the classroom, design new frameworks, which I went and tested with my students. And that's what these frameworks actually are. They're things that have worked in real life. And I talk more about that in depth on the radio show. So you're not about to hear from someone who has just got some theory, just got maybe a little bit of experience. It's all of my 32 years experience, plus the experience of over 100 PhDs, plus the application of what you're about to see in the classroom, in the practical world of parents, PE teachers, physical education teachers, and health teachers around. I'm delighted you can join me. Let's start tucking into the framework. We're just going to touch on it. We don't have enough time in 1 hour to get all the segments we're going to cover. I don't have enough time to go into the depth. Want to find out what? You can access my free radio show online called any podcast app called My Child's Healthy Life. Search for that. That's totally free. Over 100 episodes there. Plus, you can also get access. Talk about this more throughout the virtual. You get access to my free hardcover book called My Child's Healthy Life, The Expert Seeker's Roadmap. So let's start off and let's get walking through this now. Start off on the first framework and what we're going to cover. All right. I call this here the Physical Activity Foundation, or the very starting point. Look at the 6 images that you see here on the screen, closely in front of each other. These are what are the main contributors to 2 things: early mortality and early morbidity. So we look through high cholesterol that's greater than 5.5 millimoles, high blood pressure over life, high blood sugar, which is talked about a lot now with the foods that kids eat, smoking, we know that's been a problem for a long time with early sickness or early death. So if you're not familiar with the terms early morbidity and early mortality, morbidity means getting sick permanently and staying that way. So it might happen in the 40s or 30s from something like high blood pressure or high blood sugar, type 2 diabetes, those things. And early mortality is early death. Like my father, who passed away age 46 from a sudden and shocking heart attack, which no one knew was coming. So here's the question I have for everybody on this first framework, the Physical Activity Foundation framework. What is the number, look at the question, what is the number 1 influence over mortality and morbidity? And when you look through those and you look and say, most people, if you're asking the question, which one of those has the most influence? Most people look at something like high blood sugar these days, or overweight or obesity. I'm not going to answer the question at the start of this presentation. What I'm going to do is let you think about on the screen which one is medically proven to have the most impact on a person's early sickness or early death. And the answer is going to surprise you. Let's go on to the next framework that we're talking about here, and the new educational framework. There is a concept that I've been working on with laureate Professor John Hattie, Hattie, from Melbourne University, called collective efficacy. Here's what that means. If you're, look at the diagrams there. If you're a health and physical education teacher and you are, 2 students come to you and they ask you this question: what, using physical activity alone, not talking about nutrition in this particular framework, using physical activity alone, what are the series of steps that I can do as a student, as a child, that will help me lower my risk of all of the major lifestyle diseases now and for the rest of my life? Collective teacher efficacy means this: if they go to one PE teacher, one health teacher, one parent, and they go to another health teacher, PE teacher, and parent, will they get the same answer? And the reason I've created My Child's Healthy Life and the brand new educational frameworks I've been working on now for 7 years is because collective teacher efficacy, according to laureate Professor John Hattie, who was a world-renowned professor in the area of pedagogy, that's teaching methodology, what makes students successful learners. So what we're trying to get students to learn here and have deep engagement and deep knowledge about is their personal physical health status. Because as we know, and we're about to discover in the next couple of frameworks, that's not working so far. So the goal is to find out, can we create collective teacher efficacy? So if you live in the United States of America, and if you're in California or New York, the opposite sides of the country, or you live in Sydney, Australia, or if you live in Zimbabwe, if you live in Manila in the Philippines, wherever it is that you live in the world, Canada, Ontario, Edmonton, all the different places, the United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates, Italy, France, Germany. These are all the countries, by the way. I've got 41 countries right now listening to my online radio show called The Expert Secrets Roadmap, and you'll search for it and find it in My Child's Healthy Life. I'll give you a link for it as well. So the thing is, will people around the world get the same answer? And right now they're not. So part of what we're going to do here is work out how can we create collective teacher efficacy. You're a parent or whatever, well, a PE teacher or a health teacher. So here's the next framework. I call this framework on-demand living. I want you to understand something. Look at the map. Now, this is a map of only some countries. It's not all the listeners from all the countries in the world. There is a group that you've probably never heard of, but you should have, called the ActiveHealthyKids.org. What they are is a group of professors that started up there in Canada in 2005, collecting information about the physical activity levels of school-aged children. What are they? And then grade activity levels. So in all the countries in front of you that you see on this map, I'll just move myself out of the way over here and put myself a little higher. We can see South Africa. They want to miss out on South Africa. But in all those countries, and 49 countries in total, are a part of ActiveHealthyKids.global. Now, or .org, which is a global organization. There's groups of professors who study the physical activity levels of children. Now, on-demand living means this. We live in a world of Netflix, Uber, and multiple screens. Students and school-age kids, literally today, and certainly by the time that they arrive at becoming young adults, they can dial up from their pocket on their phone. Friends, transport, Hollywood, retail shops, food, electronic games, and anything they want can come straight to them. That's what I mean by on-demand living. Now, based on an analysis of 49 countries, we're facing a global epidemic of childhood physical inactivity. Look at the grading. So this organization of professors from around the world, they have graded school children's physical activity level. In the United States of America is a D-. Now, we all know as teachers and parents, it should be an A or above, A+. If we're going to have physically healthy children, become physically healthy adults. My country is a D-. New Zealand is a D-. Scotland is an F. England is doing well at C-. How can that be possible? They're doing well at a C-. I find that mind-boggling. Wales a D+, and you can read the rest. There are a list of, and I'll provide a link for this, there's a list of 49 countries that are part of Active Healthy Kids. But the story is no different no matter where you are in the world. We have a global epidemic because of on-demand living. People trying to live in a way which everything comes to them. And that has changed the physical activity level and has dramatically changed the personal physical health status, not only at school-age children, but when they transition to, and I'll talk more about this later on, when they transition into adulthood. All right, let's just click across now to the next framework over here that I want to share with you. So what I've done in order to address what you just saw on the previous 2 pages is created this, the Expert Secrets Roadmap. We do not have time in this section of the virtual conference to deep dive into the Expert Secrets Roadmap, but it's a 5-part roadmap. And as I said to you, it's based on my 32 years of experience as a health and physical education teacher. Now, the roadmap is made up of the top corner up there, the Band 6 wheel that you can see over there, then something called the Band 6 ladder, 100 PhDs in your pocket, go to the bottom, it's called Tracking Made Easy, and then the final thing that I've designed, which is an amazing part of the system, is called the Health Passport, based on some groundbreaking research from an amazing professor out of Finland, and I'll talk about that at another time. So that is what the roadmap is made up of. What I'm going to do here now is touch on the first part of the Expert Secrets Roadmap from My Child's Healthy Life. All of this is inside the book. If you really want a deep dive, as you probably have already seen, or hope that you've seen, I've made a free hardcover book that explains all of these frameworks in deep detail. There's some video content that goes with the book. There is an audio book version of it. But I'm going to just touch on something called the Band 6 wheel right now. So the Band 6 wheel has 4 diagrams inside it. The purpose of the Band 6 wheel is to guarantee wherever you are in the world, so all those countries that I've shown on that map before, the ones that I mentioned, all the 41 countries that are listening to my free online radio show called My Child's Healthy Life in any podcast app, all of them are inside. All of the frameworks are available there. But what I want to show is it doesn't matter where you are, the Band 6 wheel has one objective: to get school-aged children and guarantee you, whatever country you live in, to guarantee that you will have physically healthy children that get into this framework that's in front of you right now, called the health funnel. So here's the deal with the health funnel. Medical evidence shows that there are 3 expert secrets that have overwhelming evidence that if you use these health secrets, now I call them health secrets because they may be known, but they're not applied in any education framework I've ever seen. There's 3 specific things that you can do as a parent, as the student yourself or the child yourself, and as a health teacher or PE teacher. 3 specific things. Look at the bottom of the funnel. 3 specific things that if you do them, I will guarantee you, medically proven, and I've got all the doctors to support this, and I've got them talking about it in their own words on my radio show. Medically proven to have an impact where you will become healthy. So take a school-aged child who might be physically healthy now. They might not stay that way. Take another school-aged child who's not physically healthy right now, but you want to get them healthy. There are 3 things that I talk about in depth inside the book. I call them expert secret 1, 2, and 3. Medically proven with over, I think there was 106,000 people on the research for these 3 secrets. Over 106,000 people. So it's a huge study produced by, no less, you'll see in a minute, the American Heart Association. But this framework is absolutely critical. And I just wanted to touch on that and show you what's called the health funnel. Now, the little diagram in the corner over there that says the disease funnel says 98.1% of children go into something when they become an adult, if they're not there already, into something called the disease funnel. This is the data worldwide. 13 out of 15 school-aged children will enter the disease funnel. Things like cardiovascular disease, which you may be aware of, is the #1 killer of adults. 18 million people in the world this year will die from a heart and blood vessel disease. Most of those are premature because they didn't go into the health funnel. They went into something that I frame called the disease funnel. Other things like endothelial dysfunction, which I'll talk about in the book in more detail. Something that's horrible called end-stage organ failure, diabetes, and cancer. When you get into the disease funnel, most people never get out. And it only ends up with one of those 4 things: surgery, mortality, morbidity, or medicine. But I'm showing you the disease funnel because that's where most children are going, despite the best efforts of parents, despite all of the health and physical education lessons that are happening in every country around the world. And I'm speaking to literally over 6,000 health teachers around the world this year in 2020 when I recorded this. All right, the next framework that's inside the book that we've really got to touch on is the Band 6 wheel. So the Band 6 wheel, remember, these 4 components are designed to guarantee that a student will turn out to be physically healthy, both as a school-aged child and an adult. This is called intensity blocks. The only thing I'm going to say about this framework is that what this framework does is it uses heart rate, either the technology of a heart rate watch, or you can do it manually using it on your neck or using it on your wrist, that uses the technology of heart rate and applies it to health. And it's a framework that I've created called intensity blocks. I won't go into it now. It says 8 to 10 per week you need to achieve in order to become physically healthy, but it relates to expert secrets 1, 2, and 3. But we'll move on that because we've got more to cover in this the best time in history virtual webinar. Okay, I've also created this framework called the magical way. So what I did was, using what you've just seen with the Band 6 wheel, I then went ahead and created what I call a 6-step formula that I use in classes to get my students to want to put down, listen to this, to want to put down their mobile phones and want to be physically healthy and raise their personal physical health status for a lifetime. So that's what I've been able to do with this formula called the magical way. And I have a free audio episode. If you stay to the end of this virtual webinar, I have the free audio episode of those 6 steps available for people who stay to the end. There's a link that I'll show you right at the end of the webinar. So Let's move on to the last couple of frameworks that I want to discuss with you right now. Just going to click across here. We have a little challenge in getting across. Here it comes in just a moment. And getting to the last one, still not over the last one. That's what technology does. Okay. I'm going to play for you a video episode that I created now. And what this video episode does is it will go through the reason that I created My Child's Healthy Life, and it will address one of the frames. I think, actually, we're just going to go back a little page over here because I think we missed this framework here, or it's not actually in there. So the video that I'm going to cover with you is going to address the framework that is the last part of the Band 6 wheel. It's called Active Heart Fitness Score. So it's got 4 parts to it. Active Heart Fitness Score, it's got the health funnel, disease funnel, and intensity box. But the video episode that we're going to shoot across right now is going to show you what the Active Heart Fitness Score is. And I think it's better to do it in video than just a still image framework. Okay, that's a quick look, just a real short dive in 15 minutes into just some of the frameworks that are a part of My Child's Healthy Life, the Expert Secrets Roadmap, as we start talking about why is it the best time in history to be involved in this year of disruption, 2020 as I'm recording this. Why is it the best time in history when all the things that are going on in the world with COVID-19 and other things to get our school-aged children to become more physically healthy than at any point in history? So let's go across the video. Thanks for looking at these frameworks, and I'll see you at section 2. November the 1st, 1989, I took a phone call from my mother. These are the 3 words she said. Love, Dad's gone. It changed my world. He had a sudden heart attack and it was massive. The doctors later told my mother he passed away before he hit the ground. He was just 47 years old. There is a song by a musician called Jimmy Ruffin. It's called What Becomes of the Broken Hearted. Let's listen to the chorus and the words go, what becomes of the broken hearted? Who's had life that's now departed? I know I've got to find some kind of peace of mind, maybe. The purpose of this DVD learning series is to develop some peace of mind from our #1 killer. One person every 10 minutes of every day in this country dies of a cardiovascular event. Most die by far premature. Peace of mind for my family and peace of mind for your family. If I can help you to discover the beat of your healthy heart and you avoid a cardiac event, this will give me peace of mind. I have taught over 30,000 health and physical education lessons in schools. Over the past decade, I've been bringing together the global knowledge of expert professors from medicine, cardiology, childhood physical activity research, applied exercise physiology, cognitive function, physioactivity technology, education theory, and many more disciplines. Every single one of them has combined to produce the Expert Secrets Roadmap. Australia scores a D- for physical activity. The USA scores a D-. There's a C- for South African school-aged children, C- for physical activity for English school children, a D+ for physical activity for Wales, and an F for children in Scotland. And then for Canada, there's also a D-. I've even taken a flight 16,000 miles from Sydney, Australia to Nashville, Tennessee to visit with 5,000 PE teachers at the national conference. All over the globe, I've asked the same question of teachers. Do you have a roadmap, a way to navigate our children away from the disastrous and rapidly declining levels of physical activity in the modern world? You know the answer? 0. No one had that roadmap. So that's when the My Child's Healthy Life Expert Secrets Roadmap was created. Built the Expert Secrets Roadmap and the on-demand health course so that we can literally stop the disease funnel within 12 months of applying expert secrets inside your school. Evidence-based future education. It's here now. Calling on every health and physical education teacher across the globe, no matter where you live. Bring the Expert Secrets Roadmap to your school. Together we can team up, stop blaming society for the poorest levels of physical activity and health outcomes in the history of our world. I promise you this, over 50,000 students in Australian schools already have access, and it's growing every week. Change your school community with the help of the plethora of experts I will hand over to you when you decide to order the Expert Secrets Roadmap for your school. Okay, everybody, that's that section of the little video done. Oops, I've got to get that part off and get that part back on. So welcome back to my live part of the presentation where I am here at my home office, and thank you very much for staying here and for continuing to join me. So there we go. We've looked at the first set of frameworks that make up My Child's Healthy Life, and it's just the first part and not even in depth. But what I did with this was I took those frameworks, and before I brought them to you and put them into this book and put them into this presentation, where I'm going to now go into them deeper in the next different sections. Before I did that, what happened was I actually tried them on my own students from 2017, 18, 19, and 2020 to make sure that what I was doing here would work for you, whether you're in the Philippines, England, Canada, New Zealand, the United States of America, South Africa, United Arab Emirates, where I've got listeners to in my radio show, my online podcast called My Child's Healthy Life. So if you want to find that, just go search My Child's Healthy Life. So I wanted to make sure that these things that I'm sharing with you actually work, and it's not just theory. See, that's one of the differences. What I'm able to do is I do what you do. If you're a health teacher, if you're a physical education teacher watching this right now, live across anywhere in the world, but particularly all these people in the Philippines, then what you and I do is the same thing. And I've practiced this with my students for years in classes, as well as got experts who are PhDs in all those different areas I mentioned before. Let me introduce you now to the second part of the presentation called impact. So this section here, you'll see what the objective is of this part of the frameworks. It's like, if I'm being a health teacher, if I'm being a physical education teacher, here's the question I've got for myself, and see whether or not you ask the same question to yourself. And that is, what impact am I actually having on my students? Are they becoming physically healthy as teenagers, as young people in primary school? And are they actually becoming healthy as adults? The evidence says that they're not. My father dies of a heart attack at 46, like you just heard, and from nowhere, because no one taught him about health and physical education where it actually had an impact. So I want to share with you section number 2. It's very short. This is just for 5 minutes. And then the professor who I've been working with has a 2-minute presentation that he is going to share with you. And I'm delighted to share that with him with you as well. So I'm going to bring one of my professors to you after this 5-minute presentation about impact. So let me just go onto my screen over here, get it over to section number 2, and here we go for the second part of the presentation. Hey everybody, welcome back to section number 2 here of the Best Time in History virtual conference. So this section here, as you can see, is entitled Impact. And this is probably, in my opinion, as an educator, as someone who's been a professional teacher for the last 32 years, it's my opinion that this is the reason that it's the best time in history. This is a short segment here, but I want to share in more detail this framework that I talked about, which was called collective teacher efficacy. So when you're a teacher or when you're a parent, whatever subject or content you're talking about, remember, we're talking about something that's going to impact a school-age child for the rest of their life, which is their personal physical health status. How do you classify it? How do you get better? How do you get them to have deep knowledge and deep engagement? You will either have low impact, which I think, to be honest, that's what the world is doing right now when it comes to school-age children transitioning into adulthood. So from students my son's age, who's 10 years old right now, right through to the end of the 18 years of age, we're not having much impact across the globe. That's what the data is showing us. Some people are in the middle, they're having some impact, but some people on the topic of the personal physical health status, which I believe is the #1 topic that should be addressed with, listen to the subject we teach, health and physical education. That's the name of the subject. So why are young adults and older adults not healthy, and why are they not physically active? In my country, listen to this, 63% of adults do 0 physical activity per week on a weekly basis throughout the year. I find that absolutely amazing. So how much impact do we have? So let me just go into a little bit more detail over here. We talked about in the last, I'll just click across this slide over here, we found in the last the last section number 1, we talked about this framework called collective teacher efficacy. When you go to one parent or one teacher and another teacher or another parent, will you get the same answer to this question? Sir, miss, mum, dad, what are the steps that I need to do using physical activity to make myself have a low risk from lifestyle diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and so on, the biggest killer. Blood vessel disease, cardiovascular disease being the biggest killer. So how do we get the same answer? And we know that we don't get the same answer. So this person on the screen right now, who I've been communicating with for the past 3 years now, Laureate Professor John Hattie, I want you to understand a little bit about what a laureate professor actually is. A laureate professor is someone who's had so much research and so much evidence backed by their peers about their research that it is agreed that they should be awarded the title of a laureate professor rather than a standard professor. John Hattie, in front of you, has produced a whole body of work called Visible Learning. You just go and search it up online and you'll find it right there. Laureate Professor Hattie says that there are over 250 factors which influence whether or not a student will become a successful learner. Remember, what I'm trying to do with My Child's Healthy Life, the Expert Secrets Roadmap, is get young people to be able to have deep engagement and deep knowledge in their personal physical health status so that their outcome for their lifetime is that they are physically healthy and have a dramatically lowered risk of a cardiovascular event, cancer, obesity, type 2 diabetes. We push them away from instead of towards a poor personal physical health status. So out of all the criteria, so let me just touch on John Hattie, Professor Hattie. He has researched, listen to this, 300 million students across 80,000 research papers. He's collated and put this data together. He says that the number one influence, no matter what subject, but the subject that I love and teach, no matter what subject, the number one influence over successful learning is called collective teacher efficacy. Will you get the same answer no matter who you're speaking to? That does not happen with health and physical education. So therefore, we're not getting healthy kids. And that's just the bottom line fact of it. So if Laureate Professor John Hattie says it's collective teacher efficacy, then the objective is, and the goal is, then how do we arrive at that point? Here's an email. Look at this. This is dated back on, when I read this up here, April 30th, 2017 at 1:58 p.m. I was actually teaching on the Oval at my school at the time with some 7th graders when this email came in. And this is Professor Hattie, who said to me about my tools that are related to building of My Child's Healthy Life. So I was at a particular stage at that time of building my tools. Professor Hattie said, yes, what you are doing is going to make a huge difference. So the frameworks that I've touched on in the Band 6 wheel and the Expert Secrets Roadmap so far, according to this email from Laureate Professor John Hattie, will make a huge difference to the outcomes of school children and their physical health status. So what I thought I would do is this. I'm going to finish this little short section here by giving you a video of Laureate Professor Hattie talking about a concept he calls Know Thy Impact. So here we go, cue the video, here comes the video, and let's listen to Professor Hattie in his own words talk about how important impact is.
What are the 3 most important things you should worry about if you're the teacher? Well, I think the first one is that know the impact. How do you know you're having an impact? And I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to do more than 3. Even on that question, I've got 3 things. Having an understanding what impact means. Having an understanding what the magnitude, how big the impact you want. And then having an understanding where the equity question, whether all kids get that impact. And so the first is that know thy impact. The second thing is you can't do it alone. Because if you have the answers to those questions and they differ from the teacher next door, then it's too random for the students. Every time they touch a teacher, it's going to be random whether the teacher has the same notions. And the other beauty of working with other teachers is, they're very good critics. I mean that in a positive way. Oh, look, this is what you think doing year 6 or year 10 in English or algebra history. This is what I think it is. And having that debate so you're all on the same page and challenge each other about what your own expectations are. Because certainly we can show that teachers who have low expectations are amongst the most successful teachers in the world at getting kids to have low outcomes. And that's certainly not good enough. So that first one is about knowing my impact. The second one is about sharing it. And I'm going to stop there because those are the two most critical things. How you go about realizing it isn't as important as we commonly want to argue in the area. There is no one magic answer. There are multiple answers to that. But that sole focus, that high focus on understanding your impact. When I walk into a classroom, my job is to understand my impact. The purpose of giving assessments in classrooms is for me to understand feedback to me as a teacher. And if you think that way, your students are a massive beneficiary.
Okay, everybody, that's Laurie Professor John Hattie, who I've been communicating with now for the past 3 years. So here's what happened there. I wrote to him one day, I heard about his work and the incredible amount of volume of work he's done and the dedication he has to student learning in all faculties. And I wrote to him at Melbourne University in Australia, not thinking he would reply, and guess what? He replied. And then we've had a back and forth dialogue as I've created this book here that you see on the screen, and back and forth dialogue about the educational frameworks. So the difference with what I've created here is they are what we call evidence-based frameworks to help cause impact. That's my goal, to cause impact with improving student health outcome. Let's move on to the next section here. I had a few more sections planned, but I realized once I planned them all out that they go for too long. So the title of this says section number 5. It's actually not section 5 in the presentation, but it's the next part where I'm going to go deeper into how do you have impact, like Professor Hattie just talked about. So let's now cue this one. This one goes for 10 minutes, and then I'll come back here live again, and we're going to go to the disease funnel and finish off on the most important thing you'll see in these frameworks about. This is all why it is the best time in history. Because what I've been able to do in my own community now with over 50,000 students across Australia, and also now thousands of students in the United States, and now I know with the people who've registered for this conference, we are responsible for, I think, of the average 1,000 people in your school, then we're responsible for over 1.5 million students for all the people that have registered for this virtual conference called the best time in history. That's a lot of people to impact. So now let's talk about the health funnel in way more detail in a different way. I'm going to go across here, cue this, it goes for 10 minutes, and then I'll be back here live with you. Hey everybody, welcome back to this section of the best time in history virtual conference. I'm unbelievably excited to share with you and go into some deep diving about this concept that I created called the health funnel. Because I know after years and years of practicing in classroom and sharing this concept, and actually I created workbooks which are not a part of this virtual conference, but then going through the workbooks with students and getting them to do actual activities and build off the health funnel, this has made probably the most amount of difference to my students of all the different frameworks that I've talked about. Is this actual health funnel. So let's start deep diving a little bit, and then the next section will go even further when we combine all of this different stuff with the Band 6 wheel and the expert secret program. We talked about early on in this presentation the 3 expert secrets that make up the health funnel. That if a school-age child or an adult, for that fact, uses the 3 expert secrets in their life, it will have such an impact that it will medically prove that they will turn out physically healthy, be classified as physically healthy, and will have low risk of them developing things like cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, and the list goes on. As long as you understand what the 3 secrets actually are. So I'm going to start tucking into them, which in the book is where we go back to the expert secret program, Help My Child's Healthy Life, free hardcover book. And the details are in a link attached to this conference. But back to that book, the details I go into much, much deeper. So this is once again deep diving a little bit, but it's giving you an idea of why the health funnel and these 3 so-called expert secrets, and they're really well hidden, I gotta say, but they're in plain view. But if you apply them together,
they make all the difference to the personal physical health status of school-aged children, both now and the rest of their life as they go on flight. So let's look at the first one. Expert secret number one is entitled Active Heart Fitness Score. And it's something I'll wager that you've never actually heard of before, because it's a terminology that I've invented by adapting a medical term that never has made it into common education. So in all the countries around the world where I've got parents, physical education teachers and health people listening to me, this terminology that's based on medical science, which you'll see on the next page, has never made it into common education ever. Yet it is remember that original question I asked in section number one? Which of those 6 things has the biggest influence over sickness and death, early sickness and early death? And here it is, you're going to see it here on the next page, something called your Active Heart Fitness Score. Well, let me just talk about where this term comes from and what it actually means here on the next page. In front of you, you can see a scientific statement, a groundbreaking medical research that I talk about once again more in depth in my book, My Child's Healthy Life, a free hardcover book you can get the link to. But this scientific statement is from the American Heart Association. Now, I have read literally thousands of different medical research documents related to physical health, because I want to know what are the mechanisms that make the human body become physically healthy. So, why does physical activity make you healthy? Most people have some general answers. What you're seeing here is the specific medical answer, and it's brand new in 2016, but I'll bet you've never seen this particular document. 46 medical professors, 4 medical boards over a period of, I think, 20 years and 106,000 people talked about something called your cardiorespiratory fitness level. Now, that is more than what it seems. But here's what this paper said. And while I'm talking, if you want to read the screen, read the screen. But basically what it's saying is this. Things like obesity, high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, and what was the other one? High blood pressure and high cholesterol. And those things, obesity, which we think are the common causes of poor physical health, are not the number one cause. So if I actually read from this document, it says a growing body of epidemiological and clinical evidence demonstrates that CRF, cardiorespiratory fitness score, or I termed it Active Heart Fitness Score for my students. So they're the same thing, but I gave it a better name so the students can understand it. And I'll talk more in the last section of this conference in detail about what Active Heart Fitness Score is. But it says a growing body of evidence that active heart fitness scores have a potentially stronger predictor of mortality than established risk factors such as smoking, hypertension, high cholesterol, and type 2 diabetes. The purpose of this statement is to prove to you that from a medical perspective, if you were to address your active heart fitness score before you address obesity, before you address high blood pressure, before you address smoking, before you address high blood sugar, you will get a better result with your personal physical health outcomes than if you were to teach people about the traditional markers alone and by themselves. This one has been proven with this 106,000 person study published by the gold standard, the American Heart Association, proven to have more influence over a person's health than the traditional ones. I never knew that until I read this paper, and the previous one, which I'll talk about, that came out in 2009, is the precursor to this. This was a big breakthrough statement, but it's never made its way into common education until now. And that's what we produce here as a school teacher, is making or getting it into the common areas of education. Now, I'm just moving myself out of the way over here and let you look at this term. I'm going to show you a video episode at the end called Pulse Wave Velocity. What that term means is, what is the flexibility of your blood vessel? So as blood pumps through, cardiologists can actually measure this biometric called your pulse wave velocity. If you get sick enough in life, you'll go to a cardiologist and they'll measure this. The poorer that your
pulse wave velocity is. So it's the speed at which blood leaves your heart, reaches your fingers and your toes, and returns to your heart. That is your pulse wave velocity, because it's a sign of your elasticity of your blood vessels. Now, here's the cool thing. You can work on active heart fitness scores in PE, and I'm going to do it so easily, you're going to be amazed with the system that we talk about when we get to the final part of the expert secret roadmap. But pulse wave velocity has a direct correlation, according to the doctors I've spoken to, the world-renowned cardiologist. I spoke to Dr. Barry Franklin, who helped produce that paper on the previous page. Pulse wave velocity is a direct correlation to your active heart fitness score. So if you raise your active heart fitness score, you have more flexible arteries. And that is actually the physical mechanism that lowers your risk for cardiovascular disease, the #1 killer. I'll show you the video at the end of this presentation on pulse wave velocity. Well, let's get across here to the next. I created a series of coins, actually physical coins, that I have that look exactly like this. So, #1 secret in the health funnel we talked about is active heart fitness score. #2, a huge amount of medical research is something called your resting heart fitness score. Now, we've heard about that potentially as PE teachers as it relates to athletes. But what we've not heard about before, as it relates to your physical health status, if you're just a regular person who is not an athlete. And let's face it, most of the children we ever deal with are not athletes. The bulk of them are just living their lives. If they have a high active heart fitness score and a low resting heart fitness score, then the chances of them getting cardiovascular disease plummet, dramatically reduce. But you need expert #2 is their resting heart fitness score. And expert secret #3 is this yellow, and we're about to see it on the next page, called your recovery heart fitness score. That means when you're involved in physical activity, up to 80% of your maximum heart rate, which we might go into what that is right now. I've got that inside the book, and I'll talk about that in way in detail inside the book. But not as it applies to you being an athlete, which is traditional. When we see that term, we think, oh, that's to do with athleticism. I'm talking about if you walk up a flight of stairs, if you have to run to a bus stop, if you have to carry something that's heavy for a little distance, how high does your heart rate go and how fast does it fall? The flexibility of your arteries as a result of your active heart fitness score. And we'll get into the classification and all that kind of thing in another group on the top here. But all of those things determine whether or not you will be in the health funnel. If you have a poor recovery heart fitness score, a high resting heart fitness score, and a low active heart fitness score, there's 3 expert secrets. You will not, school-aged children will not get into the health funnel, and that's not the goal. Okay, see you in the next section, everybody. Bye for now. Let's get on. Okay, whoops, let me just get back over here. Sorry about that, everybody. There was a little technical hitch there just for a second. I'm back on live. So that is the section that's called the health funnel, and it's a deeper introduction. What I want to do now is then go into the disease funnel, because I spoke to one of the PE teachers who registered for this conference before the conference. I asked them a few questions about their level of knowledge, or what we call deep knowledge, when it comes to physical activity and disease. And I got an interesting answer, which I think is a reasonable answer for a PE teacher. But the challenge that I have as a health and physical education teacher, and the reason I've created this whole series, not just the book, but a whole other group of things that go with it, including the free radio show, is because I don't believe that what we do know and what the way that we're sharing our educational frameworks is making the difference that it needs to and making that impact. So let's go across now. We can cue this here, and it goes for about another 5 minutes, this one. And this is about the health funnel. Then after that, I'll come back and we have one more section, and then we're going to get into question and answers. And what will happen is I have my Facebook feed live on my screen, and if you have questions, you can come along and ask some questions. Let's look at this disease funnel, because what I'm sharing with you now is much deeper than that first introduction section. So here we go, cue this, and away we go. Hi everybody, welcome back to this section of the Best Time in History virtual conference. And let's go through, let's tuck into the disease funnel. And we've talked about, let's go straight to the frameworks that we saw in section number 1. I showed you this map, the on-demand living, and I showed you the low scores of physical activity level that school-age children have got around the world. And don't get me wrong, the one, if your country is not on this map that I'm showing right now, that doesn't mean that you're in the B or A plus or A category. That's not where most people are at. In fact, I think there's only one country I've seen that's actually scored an A. I think that's somewhere from memory, like Slovakia, but it's none of the major Western countries at all. There's only one country. We've seen this one, the disease funnel. This is what we want to talk about. So we know that if you end up in the disease funnel, either one or four things happen, one or two or three or four things happen. Either you get disease and you get medicine, the first circle at the bottom of the funnel that you see before, that side over there. And then, or you get surgery and medicine, or you get something called morbidity. That means you stay permanently sick, had surgery, you've got medicine just to manage your lifestyle. It's not where any child should start in their life and end up in their life. That's not what should happen. So then the final thing is early mortality, like happened to my dad. My dad run around, living his life, he's 46 years of age, I'm 22 years of age, he simply plummets to the ground and drops dead next to my mother, looking at buying a new house in the town that they lived in here in Australia. So that's where kids are heading right now. And we know from the data, the proof is 13 out of 15 school-age children are heading down that particular roadmap. And we know that the biggest reason is that the number one cause of death globally is heart and blood vessel disease. 18 million people will die this year around the world from heart and blood vessel disease caused by a low active heart fitness score and lifestyle factors. But a low active heart fitness score is the medical science, as of that document from the American Heart Association, have proven is the reason that that's happened. It's because we've seen the heart fitness score plummet, and that's been the trigger mechanism that's causing heart and blood vessel disease. Let's go across here to the next slide. I want to talk about where did this originate from. You see a diagram here and a picture of a professor who's now retired, who published a paper in 2009 called The Biggest Public Health Problem of the 21st Century. Professor Stephen N. Blair from the Arnold School of Public Health and the Aerobics Center in Dallas, Texas, where he did this massive longitudinal study over a 15-year period on really 53,000 different people. Now, here's the amazing piece of work that was the precursor to the American Heart Association document. This is what Professor Blair produced as a piece of work. Here is a diagram drawing of a graph. And on the axis that goes up, you'll see what we call a word called attributable fraction. What that means is, looking along the bottom at low active heart fitness score, that's the red one, the first one, then obesity, smoking, hypertension, or high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes. What you can see after his 53,000 person study over 15 years, which is a huge study, is that a low active heart fitness score has more, you can attribute that to early death and early sickness way more than obesity. Look where obesity is compared to low active heart fitness score. And in fact, here's the big thing, you can't have a high active heart fitness score if you're obese, because your body doesn't function that way. When I get into the definition and classification of active heart fitness scores, you'll see what I mean. Look at smoking, which we know is bad for you. We know you shouldn't do that. We know that it makes your artery wall, the endothelial tissue, 4 times more sticky, so that fat deposits from food stick to the artery wall and cause calcification in there, and it accelerates heart disease. We know that. But that's not, it doesn't have as much impact, according to Professor Blair's groundbreaking research and the follow-up American Heart Association, the world gold standard in medical health evidence. Smoking doesn't have as much impact as a low active heart fitness score, which we know kids have got. Hypertension is the second highest impact on early sickness and early death or poor personal physical health status. But look at high cholesterol and type 2 diabetes. They are low. That's not to say that they don't cause an impact in the body. It's just when you make a comparison, they're not as high
in the disease funnel as what having a low active heart fitness score. That's why in my frameworks in the health funnel, under band 6 wheel, I've called it expert secret number 1 because of this graph and the groundbreaking research that you can go and find by Professor Stephen N. Blair, which is absolutely amazing. So that's the document that I showed you before that's based on Professor Blair's actual work. So what I'm going to do to finish off here is I'm going to introduce you to one of the authors of the paper from the American Heart Association. So unlike most teachers, health teachers and PE teachers, I didn't just decide to read the paper, the research paper. I went and found some of the professors who wrote it, who did the research. This is Professor, Dr. and Professor Barry A. Franklin from Wayne State University. And what you can read in front of you is that he is the Director of Cardiac Rehabilitation at William Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan in the United States. And he's a professor of cardiology and physiology, treats people at Wayne State University in the School of Medicine in Detroit, Michigan. The reason it's the best time in history for us to be teaching school-age children is this. Here's the reason. It's because we have access to knowledge of what to do from people like Professor Franklin. Essentially, the book that I've created, the free hardcover book you can get access to in the link inside this my website, that book is taking all of the work of these people and bringing it to mainstream education. That's what we're doing. By taking, and I'm going to give you now 2 minutes of an audio interview that I did with Dr. Franklin. And I want you to listen to the 2 minutes of this audio interview because Dr. Frank talks specifically about the research that he did and the critical importance for school-age children and adults as we move from being a child to an adult in our education of this term called active heart fitness score, which he calls cardiorespiratory fitness score. Now, I haven't gone into detail just yet about what it's all about and how you manage it and how you classify it and how do you get it to be high. That's the subject of the book, but in this conference, I'm designing it just so that I introduce you to it to encourage you to dive deeper so that you can use it in your daily life. If you're a parent, you can use the best time history content to bring it to your child, or if you're a teacher, a health teacher, or a PE teacher, you can use the content inside the book in the right sequence. So you have step 1, step 2, it's a blueprint that I've used in my own classes. You can use it and copy it and clone it anywhere around the world. And that's what my objective is. Okay, let's cut across now and listen to Dr. Franklin talk about cardiorespiratory fitness with interchangeable with my term, active heart fitness score. Okay, everybody, I'm actually going to come back live here. I'm looking at the time and being thoughtful about the time. Here's what I'm going to do with Dr. Franklin. He's a wonderful man, and I've done an interview with him. What I will do is within 24 hours, I'm going to make a link available, which will have a replay of all of the sections so that you can watch the sections of this virtual conference in different pieces. I'm very excited about the way in which our webmaster is putting that together for you right now. So those sections will be available. In that section, that's where I'll play the 2-minute audio from Professor Franklin and what he told me in my live interview with him from Detroit, Michigan. So I have an interview with him all the way from Detroit about active heart fitness scores from a doctor's perspective, and then how I've taken that in. Well, here's the next section. This is what we want to do. The last section I want to present here goes for about 5 minutes. And then after that is a 10-minute lesson that I give students, okay? So here's what we'll do. We'll look at the time and we'll watch this 5-minute section on active heart fitness scores and how we actually use those active heart fitness scores in class. So this will be the first 5 minutes of the next presentation of the framework will be deeper about active heart fitness scores, just like we did in the section you just saw. Then after that is a 10-minute lesson that I give to my students to get them to understand how you classify it and how you use it and make it something in your, oops, I'm going to check that in the background there, and use it and make it successful so that you can implement it. So the first section we're doing here in this presentation is knowledge.
And then the section after that for 10 minutes will be about implementation. So you can use it with your students in class and begin to understand what it is that you see in the book on the screen. That'll take us another 15 minutes. And then I want to spend 30 minutes with you answering questions if that's what you want to do. I'll just be around until whatever time that you want. So feel free. And so the link will be sent to you in an email for the replays. And also we'll have additional bonus material. And I'll have a few free things for you that I've created that you can take as free resources and download from today's conference. And as a thank you from me for you joining me here today. So let's cue this last section here on Active Heart Fitness Score. I've just got to get that from my computer here. Hang on 2 seconds. Watch this one, and then we'll do our little section after this, and then questions. Hey everybody, welcome back to this section called Active Heart Fitness Score for the best time in history virtual conference. So I am delighted, I'm very excited again to share this section with you and deep diving into what I call the mechanisms or the actual physical changes that happen inside your body as a result of you teaching this framework and applying this framework to either your own child if you're a parent, or to school-age children if you're a health teacher or a physical education teacher. It's not just about the framework and having knowledge of the framework, and this is deep knowledge we're diving into here, but it's also about the application of it. Now, once again, we don't have enough time here right now to go into how do you classify Active Heart Fitness Score, how do you raise someone's Active Heart Fitness Score, and when is it high enough to be classified as being physically healthy, and then how do you actually maintain it. When we talk about the expert secret roadmap, those 5 paths I showed in section 1, that's when we go into the book, that's where we get to cover that. So far, to refresh, what we've seen is this framework called the health funnel. And there's 3 expert secrets, which we've covered a little bit about here: the Active Heart Fitness Score, Resting Heart Fitness Score, and Recovery Heart Fitness Score, as they apply to health outcomes, not athletic pursuit. If you're a parent, you might know what I'm necessarily talking about. If you're a sports coach, a PE teacher, or a health teacher, you will know that the second 2, expert secret 2 and number 1, traditionally have been applied to sport performance, but you've never seen them applied to impact health outcomes. And this is the important thing that we've been covering and talking about a lot, is the Active Heart Fitness Score itself, and you'll see the number 42 on that particular point that I just went on screen on. And I'm going to talk about that in a lot of detail because that's to do with the classification system. We talked about this global research, this paper that's been produced to actually help people understand why, from the American Heart Association, this is the number 1 influence, the number 1 factor that will determine your personal physical health status. But why? Why is it? Let's dive into a little bit deeper. So we've got Active Heart Fitness Score, Recovery Heart Fitness Score, and Resting Heart Fitness Score. And then we've got something called nitric oxide. Now, this is very, very interesting. Here is a picture of a blood vessel. Now, the white arrow that you see here on the screen is pointing to the wall of the blood vessel. Just inside where you see those little red blood cells is the skin of the wall. That's called endothelial tissue. But the wall of a human blood vessel has a scoring of its flexibility of the blood vessel. And the very definition of lowering cardiovascular disease is to make all of your blood vessels, not just at the heart, so not just those big blood vessels that you see at the top of the heart, or that tiny little blood vessel you see coming out from 3D at the heart. The goal of raising your Active Heart Fitness Score is to improve the flexibility of the artery wall, and that's what we mean by deep knowledge of actually lowering your risk of the number 1 killer, the number 1 cause of poor physical health, CVD, or cardiovascular disease. So how do you go about doing that? What happens inside in the body? So we have this a heart rate. So what I'm going to touch on is this intensity block area. If you get your heart rate in segments of 7 minutes, either 7 minutes or 8 minutes, either one, doesn't really matter. I have to go for 8-minute blocks, and you get it to be at 80% of your maximum. So you can see this graph here. This is an actual graph of one of my 7th grade students where their heart rate, and remember, by the way, for those of you who are watching this, you don't have heart rate watch so say like the watch that I have on right now, just here, you don't have any type of device, you can still do this manually. And I'll talk about that in the book as well. But if you get your students' heart rate up to 80% of its maximum and maintain it during the physical education lesson or throughout the day in different activities, and you do an intensity block, it drives up your active heart fitness score. And what the reason that it drives up your active heart fitness score is because when it comes to the blood vessels, that artery that we saw before, you get something released called nitric oxide. So whenever you do enough physical activity at a specific intensity, an 80% maximum for that 8-minute block, it releases enough nitric oxide to cause your blood vessels to become more flexible, and that raises the active heart fitness score. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm finishing off now with this particular video episode, which goes in depth. This actual video that I've created, where I'm speaking, goes in depth about active heart fitness score and the actual impact inside the vessel. So let's go and finish off with that. Thanks for joining me this episode. Watch the video, and we'll be back shortly. Welcome to the second episode of our learning series for the Aware online course, My Students' Healthy Life. Look at the number on the screen. We're going to examine in detail now this thing called your active heart fitness score. The number there is 44 ml/kg per minute. Now, milliliters per kilogram per minute. The lower your number, and we'll find out where the number should be, but the lower your number, the less healthy your body is. And what we're about to find out here on the next slide is that of all the things that can make a human being sick or ill or unfortunately cause their premature or early death, the things that you are most likely to learn about are high cholesterol, to keep it low, high blood pressure, to get it low, high blood sugar, to get it low, don't smoke, and not to be overweight or obese. Those are the things that the media, television, internet, school teachers, doctors, radio, those are the things that if you look up on Google that are listed as being the most important things that will help you not be sick or cause your premature death. Notice I left out the orange box, the heart fitness score. A low heart fitness score, it turns out, we found out in 2016 from the Prestige American Heart Association, it turns out that that is more important and more influential over your physical health than the other 5 things that you see on the screen. And that greatly challenges traditional health education. Because a lot of people, if you ask them a question, they'll probably look at the blue box and say, oh, it's overweight and obesity. The reality is there is enough global scientific medical research that proves your active heart fitness score is more influential than any of those other 5 things. So what is an active heart fitness score? What happens every time you breathe in? Look at the picture of those air sacs coming off your lungs. You breathe in air and a part of it has oxygen. That oxygen goes inside the air sacs, and you can see at the bottom of the sac a cross section that has been cut open. Air comes into there, and oxygen gets pulled out into the blood vessel that surrounds it in the second air sac, and the blood vessel becomes red because it's what we call oxygenated. Then it will leave the air sac. By the way, you have 250 million air sacs in your right one and 250 million air sacs in your left one. Smoking permanently damages the air sacs and the blood vessels around it. This is a side issue, and it's not able to be repaired, and it has no capacity to regenerate and damage those tiny, tiny microscopic air sacs. The blood then goes over to the heart with oxygen in it, goes into the heart, and then simply gets pumped around your body. And once the blood, carrying the oxygen, it reaches a muscle, gets dumped off of the muscle. Your active heart fitness score is a very simple measurement. It's a measurement of your body's ability to transfer oxygen from the air sac to the heart, the blood vessel, to the muscle. The more difficult you find it to do physical activity, the lower your active heart fitness score, and the more dangerous this actually is. And here's why it's dangerous. Now, we're talking about why is active heart fitness score important? Because there are blood vessels all over your heart and all over your body. And what happens is that physical activity on a regular basis makes that blood vessel more flexible. And that's one of the most primary important things that's an outcome of doing physical activity that raises your active heart fitness score. You need to do it because if you don't, those blood vessels become stiff and inflexible. And you'll see in a later episode in this series, that a stiff or inflexible artery is a trigger towards getting very serious cardiovascular disease. So let's have a quick look here at where are the physical activity levels of young people in Australia. So look at this slide here. The Active Healthy Kids Australia ranks your overall physical activity levels of children in Australia at a D-. That rates our screen time at a D-, means we have lots of screen time. Look at the article that says The Conversation. It says Australian teenagers rank 140th out of 146 in the world, 146 countries in the world that do the least amount of physical activity. That means we're down the bottom, not up the top. Almost half of young Australians are now overweight or obese, and that's in the 18 to 24 year age category, just after you leave school. What happens is, as a result of these types of very low physical activity levels, and this graph here where it shows that by the time you reach 12 years of age in Australia, 80% of teenagers do not meet the minimum guidelines for physical activity per week in order to be healthy. So it's a great challenge we have ahead of us right now. We simply don't have children with high enough active heart fitness scores to help lower their risk of disease and getting sick. So what do you have to do in order to raise your active heart fitness score? What can you track in your body that will allow you to do that? And here it is. When you look at a heart rate graph that comes off the heart rate watches in class, you need to produce something called intensity blocks. An intensity block is simply a section of 7 minutes inside a PE lesson or a sport game or any physical activity of any kind, a period of 7 minutes where your heart rate raises to be 80% of your maximum heart rate. Now, we talked about that in the very first episode in the video, what 80% is. But it's 220 minus whatever your age is, times 0.8 times 100. And that gives you 80%. Now, we'll tell you your heart rate when it gets to 80%. So don't worry about having to try and calculate it with that formula we just mentioned. But we'll tell you that. But your heart rate graph should look very similar to this one. In fact, this heart rate graph is from a year 7 student who completed 4 intensity blocks. They did 7 minutes at 80% of their maximum, had a 2-minute rest of their game in the PE lesson, played another game, got their heart rate at least 80% of their maximum, had a 2-minute rest, did it again and again. So this person had 4 intensity blocks in 1 PE lesson. It says down the bottom, you only need to do 8 to 10 an entire week. So what's the impact of that? Look at what happens if you do 8 to 10 intensity blocks on a regular basis to your active heart fitness score. See the very first red graph? That's calculated as month number 1. If you did 40 intensity blocks, that would be 10 per week, 4 weeks, 10 per week. And let's say in the first month, your active heart fitness score, which was quite low, was 22. But it would start to cause some growth in your active heart fitness score. In the next month, month number 2, the red graph says you didn't quite get as many intensity blocks. This time you only got 32 intensity blocks, around about 8 per week. But your active heart fitness score, the blue graph in month 2, has started to grow. Month number 3, you did 40 intensity blocks for the month. Your active heart fitness score has jumped again. Not everyone's will jump this much in this order, but it will grow, and that's what we want. We want it to grow. So in month 3, your active heart fitness score is 37. In month number 4, you might have challenged yourself greatly, and you've done 50 intensity blocks in 1 month. And your active heart fitness score is now moving up in the what we call the bands, and we'll see what they are in just a moment. But your active heart fitness score is now 44. And here's the important part of how you classify yourself as physically healthy. If you have a low active heart fitness score for your age, based on age and gender, you'll be in band 1, 2, 3, or 4. They are not so protective for your physical health, meaning you could get sick as an adult or you could get disease if you are in band 1, 2, 3, or 4. The closer you are to band 1 with your active heart fitness score, far more likely to get some type of disease like heart disease, stroke, potentially cancer, diabetes, obesity. If you're in band 5 and 6, by the time you get to 44 as your heart fitness score, you will be in band 5 or 6, depending on your age and gender. But once you get to band 5 and 6, your active heart fitness score classifies you as physically healthy. You've made it, you've achieved it. Now, here's the important thing. Think of a mobile phone, your mobile phone. If you don't recharge the battery every 1 to 2 days, I would suggest every 1 day, what happens to your battery? It dies out and you can't use your mobile phone. Your active heart fitness score does not store its energy. You must, in order to maintain band 5 and band 6, you must absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, be regularly active on a weekly basis doing 8 to 10 intensity blocks. Okay, everybody, back live here. That is a wrap of the video. We've been going for long enough now, which I really appreciate people's attendance or attention and the wonderful comments that I can see down the side of my screen here that you can't see, or you could see in Facebook, of course, but not on my screen. So let's do this, everybody. If you have some questions about any of the material or questions about the free hardcover book, which I have available, as I said, pop your questions through now. I'm just checking over here. We're also on the Zoom on my iPad as well. But if you can pop your questions in here, and feel free also to email me at any stage. So my email will also be, you should have my email. I've sent lots of emails out to the large group of people that registered. But what I would like to do is this. I'd like to offer you that we will have the full replay, which will be a little bit edited and a little bit more detailed. Plus, I said to Geraldine yesterday on the phone that what I wanted to do was to give you some free resources that would go with this material that you've seen here in the Best Time in History. I honestly believe, and I was just commenting there on one of the comments that I just posted there, that I think this is a wonderful time because we have, I watched, for those of you who weren't here at the start on the Zoom conference, I watched my first ever live satellite event on television when I was a child of 10 years old, or 9 years old, back in 1975. My first ever event came from Manila, where the famous boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier happened. And that was a satellite event that was sent all around the world. The reason we're at the best time in history, there is so much real knowledge and evidence-based knowledge that is available that I put into the book that you see here, into this presentation, and this and other presentations that will become available over the rest of this year, that we can make a difference and we can make an impact like Professor Hattie says. So what we need to do, though, is we need to take these things on board and learn them so that we have lessons to actually use. So I've created some free resources that are available to you by tomorrow that will be available on my website and also in the Facebook link that I'll post in Facebook group, your Philippines Facebook group, and also my own personal Facebook page as well. So look, I wanted to say thank you, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for the comment from, I think this name is correct, Topher. I always like to get my students' names correct, and I ask them all the time. So I want to make a difference. In Australia, we have 25 million people, and about 10 million or so of those, 12 million, are school-aged children. Those school-aged children are growing up, and they don't have the, so if you look at it right now, you look at timeline, here is on the front cover, you can see my son, that's my child. His name is Robert, and it's my middle name, and with my dad's middle name, so we named him Robert. Beautiful little boy. My wife, listen to this, Those clothes that you see my son on in the front cover of my book, my wife made those clothes. So made the shirt, made the shorts. She's very, very good at dressmaking, and she makes a lot of these clothes. He's about to turn 11, so we just love that photo so much. We wanted to use that on the book. What I want to be able to do is this. There are probably about 50 million school-age children in the Philippines, okay? And my objective is this. I want to make an impact with you. Myself as a health and physical education teacher here in Australia, I can only be responsible for the 1,000 or so students that I interact with. So I have my sport classes, my health classes, and my PE classes. I can't make a big enough impact in the world just by teaching the students in front of me. And that's why I put on the best time in history, so that what we can do is we can go ahead and make a difference for school-age children, no matter where they are. So let me look at a couple of questions here. What exercise can you advise for a senior citizen? And I'm not going to try and pronounce the names because I think I'll get some of them wrong, because like a typical Australian person, we don't travel very much and we are not very good at names. And I have to often ask my Filipino students in class how to pronounce the names. Here's the interesting answer to your question about what exercise should a senior citizen do. And I've actually talked to Dr. Barry Franklin, who you will hear in the replay. So you'll hear an audio, a section of my audio review about a question to that, because Dr. Franklin, who you saw a picture of during the presentation, what he does is he treats senior citizens. And he and I talked about this exact question. And he said it's based on heart rate. So what everyone seems to do, and the understanding that most of us have about, thank you for that comment, but understanding that most people have is that it is all about what physical activity that we do. But if you listen to the professors of cardiology and the professors who treat disease of older people and like advanced cardiovascular disease, it's about, and Dr. Franklin and I talked specifically about this, it's about when you're exercising, do something that you enjoy, but make sure that your heart rate gets to 80% of its maximum for a short time period, for about a 7-minute, maximum 8-minute block. So you raise your heart rate to that 80% level, which is you're puffing, but you're not killing yourself. You're not trying to be an athlete. And that's the big difference. It's moderately intense. Then what that does is it releases nitric oxide into the blood vessels. And then what it does is it makes over time, by having an intensity block and another intensity block, no matter what type of exercise you do, that's the point. It really doesn't matter what type of exercise. What is important is, are you getting nitric oxide into the blood vessel wall? So this is called the endothelial tissue, the skin of the wall, if that was the artery. And is nitric oxide flowing into that and impacting it and making it more flexible? Because that's what actually reduces disease. But until I started talking to these professors, I didn't know that. I thought it was all about what's the best type of exercise. So it's about enjoying yourself, the best type of exercise, whatever you like to do that gets your heart rate up. And those people who were just saying those lovely kind comments, again, thank you. But that is my goal, is to be inspirational. My goal is to do two things, I guess, really. To provide inspiration so that we want to lift our standards so we have an impact. I think the one difference between what I'm able to do as a health and physical education teacher is this. All of the experts, so-called experts that we see in the world that come to us with textbooks and information, they are researchers and doctors and people who are professors, but they're not like you and I. We go to school every day. We're the ones that teach school-age children. We're the ones that are parents of children. I'm a parent, and many of you would be a parent, but we are the ones that interact face to face. The gap that I see, and the reason that I wrote this book that you see here on the screen, is because what happened was I saw these professors having tremendous work, like Professor Franklin, like the American Heart Association, like I've got my free online podcast called My Child's Healthy Life. That's what you need to search for. And you can go search for it now. You can search for it in any app. And I'll put a link to the online version of that as well if you just want to do it online and you don't have access to apps on phone, which you do with the internet. But in My Child's Healthy Life, I've actually interviewed lots of these professors and I give them to you for free so you can use their content. And so what happens for me as a health and phys ed teacher is I don't see people who are the researchers and who are the professors doing what you and I do. So what we have is this, we have the professors over here and we have us as PE teachers in the middle, and then we have the students on this side, okay? Trying to do the reverse of my screen, that's a little bit hard. So it's professors here, it has us as health and PE teachers here, and then it has the students. And the students never get to meet the professors, and the knowledge never gets there. What I want to do is be a bridge in between. Now, what I've done is I've provided, oh, it stopped. Somebody says that it stopped. It's still going at my end. I think, yes, it's still live at my end. So hopefully it's stopped. I'll just say it's still live here. I'll just type that comment in. Oops, still live here. Hopefully everybody else has still got this live here. So I'll just post that so that person knows. Okay, so that's what happens is that there's no bridge. A lot of this deep knowledge has not been turned into educational frameworks. And there's one thing, besides being incredibly passionate, because I don't want my child, Robert, who you see right here, I don't want him growing up to become an adult who dies like his grandfather. He never got to meet his granddad, ever. My son was born in 2009, and my dad died in 1989. So it was a huge gap. There was no chance of him ever meeting. My wife never met my father. So what I want to do is this. I want to provide lots and lots of free content, heaps of free content for you. So there'll be it's called My Child's Healthy Life in any podcast app, free radio show, lots of episodes waiting for you, and also this free hardcover book. Now, for those of you who are a little bit confused about that, what I've done is I've paid for the printing of the book. It gets released on September the 5th. There's a website for the book, which I'll make available to you on the Facebook pages. But I'm asking for people to pay for the shipping of the book because this will go onto Amazon on September the 5th when it goes live for $34.95 plus shipping. And then the audiobook version goes on for $38.95 with no shipping, of course, onto Amazon. But what I'm doing is for your attendance here today, I'm making this where I've paid for the printing of the book and there's a small shipping and handling fee for orders inside Australia, $9.95 and $19.95 outside of Australia. So that's what I've offered to a select group of people. That's not available to everybody because we just couldn't operate like that. But right now I think I've got about 5 free resources planned for you in the replay of this event tomorrow, which will be up in 24 hours. So look for it on the Facebook pages and also in your email inbox as well, because I've got everyone's email. And then you can also look at and have a look at the link for this particular book. Look, I think we have now got through some, people have been saying hello and some wonderful kind comments. I'll put the email address, if you don't already have my email address from the emails I've sent you, I'll put that in the replay website as well and post that. And you can ask me questions because you might look at my frameworks and I'm a different type of presenter. Not only do I want to give you free stuff because I want the message to be out there about My Child's Healthy Life and what we could accomplish as health teachers and physical education teachers and the impact we can have. But what I also want to be able to do is I want to be able to be in a position where I can interact with people back and forth across the world. Because the unique thing about this community, because I deal with parents on this project as well as dealing with health and PE teachers. But the unbelievable thing about health and PE teachers is this. You are responsible collectively, and me, for probably 1 million students that we can have an impact with. Now, I can't do that with just individual parents. And that's why I love the subject that we teach, because as a group of people around the world, that's what we are responsible for. So once again, I think what we need to do is we need to come to the stage where we're ending. I'm just going to check over on the Zoom here. There's a question here. How long does an average age student, 12 to 16, need to do cardio exercise to lower the risk of cardiovascular disease? Now, I'll answer that on the Zoom link in just a moment, but I'll answer it here verbally. So what ends up happening is that, and you'll see this in the book when you go into it in more detail, And I have another conference, which is a different conference than this, that does also go into the teaching aspect of it, which this one is an introduction one. But what happens is this: it is all about what is their active heart fitness score. So I'm going to teach you in the book and some other free content, how do you actually determine what each student's active heart fitness score is? That's number one in a class. Then how do you grow their active heart fitness score after you determine it? And then at what point does it get classified as being physically healthy? So you saw that video, band 1 is not terrible, band 2 is not good enough, band 3 is not good enough, band 4 is not good enough. You have to get into band 5 and band 6. So the answer to the question that's on Zoom, when I just look at it over there, is how long do they have to exercise? On average, you need to do about 8 to 10 intensity blocks per week. That's 7 minutes or 8 minutes at the most at 80% of your maximum heart rate. There's a formula for it, but that's what causes physiological change enough to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. So I go into things like, inside the book, I go into things like the growth score rather than the raw score. So how far are students growing, and when do they get to band 5 and when do they get to band 6? You don't have to be an athlete to get to band 5 and band 6. You're just going to be a normal, everyday person. And it doesn't take athletic performance. What it takes is consistency of these intensity blocks and getting your heart rate to a certain level. So that's my answer to that, is it's getting your enough intensity blocks in, usually 8 to 10 per week. So that's not a lot, by the way, but it has to be at a high enough level. But it doesn't kill the students. I do 80% all the time as an adult, and I'm 54 years old, and it's not that hard. But I am consistent with it because I want to lower the risk of cardiovascular disease. Let me just look at the next question over here. If a student said that he or she has a heart problem, what are the limitations in regards to physical activity in school and PE? I have lots of students that here's the answer to that question. I have lots of students that come to me with a medical certificate. And what I do is, my rule is this: whenever I get a medical certificate, I write to the parent through email or in a note back to the student, and I'll ask them, can you get your doctor to provide any medical limitations that are associated with the heart condition? Or it might be to do with their body. Like, I have one boy I teach this year, lovely boy, but he has cerebral palsy. And so he has limitations. And I have lots of different students in my class that have various limitations. So my answer to your question is, I communicate with the parents, and by communicating with the parents, I find out what the doctor says. And I often get to ask the parents, can you get the doctor to write me a note? So that's that question there. With that one, and I'm just reading through here in the comments on Facebook Live. Look, we've got to the end here. There doesn't seem to be any more questions just here on Facebook Live. I hope that we've covered a lot of new things for you, a lot of things that you've never seen. And that was my objective here, is because the things that we're used to seeing in health and physical education are, in my opinion, after a long 32-year career now of teaching in school, since I qualified with my degree in 1988, after a long time, I wanted to create something which would make this impact, but would draw you in to the deep knowledge world that is behind the Expert Seekers Roadmap. So everybody, it has been a delight, in my opinion. As I said to Geraldine and the people on the Zoom part of the meeting when I first started, in my opinion, I have probably 30, 40 different cultures in my school that I teach in all my different classes. So I have lots of students I interact with all the time on a weekly basis. I think I'm responsible for an average of 250 students a week in all my classes. And without a doubt, the kindest, most respectful people are the Filipino students. And I work with a Filipino teacher. We have a large faculty. We have about 12 staff in our faculty. And I work with a lovely man, Paul, who is born in the Philippines. But the students themselves are wonderful. The kind comments that you said here, exactly the same. I want to finish off with, this is how I always like to finish off with, this is a 2-minute speech. I always finish off with something that is an interesting story that I hope will make an impact in the way that you think, because I believe it's the way that we think as educators, as parents, that will make a difference as to whether our children turn out to be physically healthy or not. And that's what our subject is, health and physical education. Here's a story I want to finish off with. In the year 2000, the Sydney Olympic Games were, and I don't know if you saw those on television, that's 20 years ago, they were 5 minutes from my house. The Olympic Stadium was 5 minutes from my house in Sydney. And through my school, I got to be a volunteer at both the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony of the Olympic Games. I'll tell you a quick story about the closing ceremony. It's about 6 o'clock at night. It's dusk, it's beautiful warm time in September. And I'm at the Olympic Stadium, and it's the closing ceremony. It's the end of the men's marathon, one of my favorite events. And I won't go into why it is, but we had a runner in Australia who was up near the top of the pack, called Steve Monaghetti at the Sydney Olympic Games in the men's marathon. And I was, can you believe this? I was at the fence as a volunteer for the Sydney Olympic Committee. I was at the fence where the men's marathon finished, the finish line at the track of the men's marathon. It was the most exciting, one of the most, besides the opening ceremony, which has an even more crazy story, that I'll tell you another time. But I'm watching the closing of the men's marathon, and it was just an amazing stuff. Then, at the end of the men's marathon, the race finished, the last runners came in, just before we started the closing ceremony where the fireworks went off. And I actually got to march on the floor they let some volunteers march on the floor with the athletes. That was just, to this day, blows my mind. So I was marching on the floor of the closing ceremony of an Olympic Games as a volunteer. It was a fun time. But just before that, they finished the marathon, and then an announcement came over the speakers, and it was one of those voices, and it was the International Olympic Committee were giving an award to a former athlete at the Olympics. And so you hear this announcement, and then the answer was like, you know, when you hear that voice, it's like, the International Olympic Committee would like to award. And then they talked about this athlete, and they showed a 2-minute video clip of an athlete from the 1968 Olympic Games called John Stephen Akhwari. That was the name of this athlete from Tanzania. So I'm watching this video on the screen, sent chills up my spine, because what happened was another African runner called Abibi Bikila won the men's marathon. John Stephen Akhwari of Tanzania didn't win the race. And the International Olympic Committee were awarding him that night a gold wreath for services to the Olympic movement, to ideals to inspire the Olympic movement. And so they had this video because what John Stephen Akhwari, the athlete from Tanzania, did back in 1968 was he finished the race 3 hours after Abibi Bikila, who won the event. And they usually cut it off. So he was the last place person, and his feet were bleeding and bandaged because he came from a poor nation. He didn't come from a rich nation, Tanzania. But he finished the race 3 hours later, and they showed this on the video screen in 2020 in black and white from the 1968 Mexico Olympics. And so I'm watching this, and it's like, then, you know, it said and then the voice comes back over, the International Olympic Committee would like to award in the stadium tonight the gold wreath for services to the ideals of the Olympic movement for fairness and competition to John Stephen Akhwari of Tanzania. Can you believe this? I'm standing next to this guy, this African guy, who was in a green and gold Tanzanian tracksuit, who's probably about 10 years older than me. And then all of a sudden, the guy that I've been standing next to, watching this video and hearing the voiceover in the Olympic Stadium, that guy just walks out onto the track, walks onto the podium, and accepts the wreath, the gold wreath, for services to the Olympic movement. I was standing next to the whole night, or that whole section of the night, the actual person who was John Stephen Akhwari of Tanzania. Here's what he said as he has accepted the wreath in the Olympic Stadium that night. And I don't think this was televised. This is what he said. He was asked the question, why did you finish the race? And this is what he said, and it still gives me the answer, still gives me chills to this day, 20 years later. He said, my country did not send me to start the race. My country sent me to finish the race. Unbelievable. That's why, with bleeding feet and bandages, he came in 3 hours later after the winner of Be the Killer. I do not want to just start with My Child's Healthy Life. I want to make an impact on people's lives. The children in the Philippines, you represent, all the people registered for this, represent over 1 million different people and 1 million different students. I want to make some impact with physical activity. I want to make a difference. So thank you for joining me. I see one more question over here. It's to do with food, and it's about the food pyramid guide. Is there any suggestions that you can advise for those of us less fortunate to suffer malnutrition? And that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to answer that question in an email, because food is a topic that we cover in our subjects here in Australia, but it's not a question that I wanted to address here. It's physical activity, but I will address it in an email because I don't want anybody not to have their questions answered. So my email, by the way, if you want to email me right now, is called expert@pe21.com.au. The word expert at letter P, letter E, number 21.com.au. And you can email me some questions and some follow-up questions, and I get those on my phone and notifications on my watch straight away. And I like to answer back very quickly, or you can message me on Facebook as well. So the conference doesn't end. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your holidays. I think you guys are not back at school for some time. We have a 2-week break here in Australia as of today. Thank you for attending, and thank you for the comments. The last person there about the inspiring part. That's the goal. You know, one more statement. There's a word called character. And then I heard the definition of the word character one time. It said, character is this: long after the mood in which the decision was made, can you still carry out the decision? I'm going to work with you and keep working with you. I want to present my character to you about this subject, which I have so much passion about, that we can make a difference to people's lives, no matter the obstacles, like we just was asked about with the food. We can make a difference to the personal physical health status and change children's health destiny. Thank you for joining me, everybody. You are a lovely group of people, and I look forward to continuing our conversation and continuing to communicate through the Facebook, through the email, and through the websites that I'm going to present to you in the future. Bye for now. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Hello?
Oh, hello. Yes, I'm here. Hello. Is that...
Yeah, Anna.
Hello, Anna.
Anna.
Thank you.
Can you?
Yes.
Yes. Can you still hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
Perfectly.
All right. There are some questions here that you're not able to answer,
Yes.
but can you give us a brief answer for this? So from
Yes.
Adele, can a person with atherosclerosis heart perform heavy exercises a day?
Okay, yes, I've asked that exact question to several cardiologists in the United States. So let me just get my video back up here, because I think I turned the video off there. And yep, here I am back here again. Hi, everybody. So the question is, just to make sure that I get this question correct, the question is, can a person with atherosclerosis, which is the leading cause of heart disease, are they able to perform heavy exercise? So Dr. Frank, one of the questions people I asked that to was Dr. Eduardo Sanchez. Dr. Sanchez, which you'll get to hear some things from him on my free radio show. Dr. Sanchez is the Chief Medical Officer for Prevention from the American Heart Association, the unbelievable doctor. And he said specifically, and also another exercise professor of physiology, said the same thing when I asked them both the same question. The answer is yes. And in fact, there is a lot of evidence now to suggest that when we say heavy exercise, we're talking about, depending on the age, a student won't have atherosclerosis, but an older person, yes, because there's a lot of evidence to suggest the nitric oxide that gets released into the blood vessel that makes the artery more flexible. There's research now that Dr. Franklin told me about that overcomes atherosclerosis because the artery becomes so flexible. Does that make sense to the person who asked it? I hope so.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
That's Ma'am Adele. She's the one who asked that question.
Hi,
Okay.
Adele.
Another question is from Ma'am Lab Manaay. If a student
Yep.
said that he or she has a heart problem, what are the
Yes.
limitations in regards with physical activity in school, like PE classes?
Okay, so what I mentioned this on the Facebook Live. What I do when I have students that have a medical condition, because I have lots of students have medical conditions. I'm teaching a student this year who has cerebral palsy, and what I do is I actually I write a note to the parent saying, can you please provide with me a medical certificate from the doctor? And what I would like to do is, are there any limitations that the doctor says that you have? So, if a student has a heart problem, and I had one student, maybe 2 years ago, that had heart disease. They had open heart surgery at 14 years of age. So I wrote to the parent, and then I got the parent to get me a medical certificate, and then I just modified that student's work. And they were very, very smart student. They were also able to modify their work. So that's my methodology as a teacher on how to deal with that type of issue.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. I think there are some questions here. From Nina Serafico, will simple exercises add up to the active heart rate of an individual?
Okay, just clarify that question. I didn't quite hear one part of it, Anna.
Will simple exercises add up to the active heart rate of an individual?
Yes.
Simple exercises.
Yes, and the answer to that question is yes, they do. I'm working with a professor out of Finland. So I've got professors all over the world, but one of the professors from Finland is on one of the biggest there's a current research going on and a past research that he's done. And Professor Ulriksson, that's his name, is Professor Ulriksson. He has talked to me about how you can do simple exercises at a lower intensity, but they will also contribute to the improvement of the active heart fitness score, which lowers that risk of cardiovascular disease. In fact, is the #1 determinant of whether or not you get cardiovascular disease is what is that actual score. So the answer is absolutely yes.
Thank you, sir. Another from, I think I was not able to ask this one, from Sir Benjamin Benji Sapanta. How can high intensity in training affect one's immune system?
Okay, so the immune system, I've done a little bit of work on this and a little bit of reading and medical research on this. What my understanding of it is that it raises things like has some impact on white blood cell count, which does some stuff for immunity, and it has some other areas that it improves in terms of the release of different chemicals into the bloodstream. What I might do is, if the person who asked me that question would like to email it to me, I will ask one of my professors the exact answer to that question, and then I'll send that back in an email. So I think I said I'm going to provide the email in the Facebook group and also my own Facebook group and email you, but it's expert@pe21.com.au. So the letter P, letter E, number21.com.au. So if you were to ask me that question, I'll ask one of my professors and I'll come back to you with an exact answer. Okay. Hello to the little boy in the corner. Hello. Edison, hello.
Who else? Let's see in our group. Okay, I think we answer all the questions here in the Zoom, and let's check in our YouTube channel if there are some questions. But mostly, sir, they are saying thank you for sharing all your knowledge and expertise, especially in sharing your book with us. And and that's all, I think.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, have a great. Thank you, Anna. Thank you,
Anna. Wait, can we give him the certificate?
Yes,
wait, I'll share it.
We end our session with Sir Shane Stubbs. So let me
Oh, thank you. That is so kind of you.
Yes.
That's
All right.
beautiful.
So let me allow me to read the citation of your certificate, sir. So the National Council for Physical Educators of the Philippines, or NCPEP Incorporated, in cooperation with Rotary Club Jose Abad Santos, Manila, awarded certificate of recognition Shane Stubbs for imparting his valuable insights and expertise to physical educators during the NCPEP Fit Fun International Webinar Series entitled The Best Time in History Virtual Conference, held on July 3, 2020, given this third day of July 2020, signed President NCPEP and RCJ Santos, Dr. Geraldine Caschola Minyas. Thank you very much, sir. So we will send you your digital certificate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much. You're very, very kind.
Thank you. I hope
Thank you,
this
Sir
will not be
Stubbs.
the first and the last time that you will join us in our webinar, especially that right now we are preparing a lot of things for this incoming school year. Your sharing today's webinar session is really help us to make or create more enjoyable and interesting to our students, especially those who are students who cannot perform different physical activities, and it's hard for them to perform different physical activities. Thank you very much, sir. And lastly, all the participants in our Zoom, kindly check the link that we sent by Doc G. This link was for your attendance. So because it's 12:05 already here in Manila, so we're extending our attendance until 1:30. So don't forget to take a picture or selfie of yourself, of course, that you are having or attending this webinar series or session with Mr. Shane Stubbs. And also to our YouTube audiences, the link was already posted by Doc G. All you need to do is the same thing, that you have to take picture, and also don't forget to use hashtags and also post it in our FB group and our FB page. Maraming pong salamat. Thank you very much, Sir Shane Stubbs, and let's give a round of applause to our resource speaker. Thank you very much. And also, please don't forget to subscribe, to check his website and also our FB page group for some announcement regarding the book that you offering to us, sir, and how we are going to avail this book also.
Certainly. Okay, everybody. Bye. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yes. Okay, so thank you very much to all our members here in the Zoom. Maraming pong salamat. So we extend. Extended talaga tayo.
Extended bongga.
Thank you, Ma'am Anne.
Thank you.
Salamat.
Thank you. Wala kang group pic, Ana.
Ay, sorry, we forgot.
Wala, pati si Sir Shane. Nakalimutan mo. Hindi ako makasingit eh. Tuloy-tuloy ka magsalita. Sabi ko, wala pang picture.
Nagutom na eh.
Oo nga, nakalimutan na. Okay lang. Tayo lang.
Already, game.
Game.
Tayo na lang. 1, 2, 3.
Photoshop mo na lang si Sir.
One more. 1, 2, 3. Next.
Sama ba ako doon?
Ito. Game. 1,
2,
3.
Basta post na lang kayo ng post.
One more. 1, 2.
Sana bagay sa'yo yung ganun.
Thank you. Alam ko ba?
Ulit eh.
Salamat.
See you tomorrow.
Tomorrow again.
Same time.
Don't forget the
Bye-bye.
links, ha?
Salamat po.
Bye, Nina.
Bye, G. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Have a happy day po.
Bye, Ana. Bye-bye.
Blessed weekend, everyone.
Blessed weekend.
Ayaw, weekend na. Pero don't forget tomorrow and on
Mimi, ikaw di mo talaga alam ang araw.
Kasi ang dami kong
Di mo
ginagawa.
talaga alam ang
Stress na
araw
si
kasi
Ma'am
araw
Ana.
ka na natutulog.
Wala pa akong tulog actually.
Wala ka na
Wala
naman
naman
tulog.
yan si
Adik ka
Ma'am
talaga
Ana.
eh. Sinasabi ko sa'yo eh.
And tomorrow, don't forget our mental
Yes.
health from UAE, our resource speaker from UAE, and also, of course, on Sunday.
Sunday.
Lesser Lord.
And
Sir Lord.
our chairman of the board of directors in NCPED. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
To